Hello and welcome to CIT 170 Database Design. This week we're going to take a look at how you develop a database in Microsoft Access. As you already know, during a previous week you were asked to read the Database Fundamentals, which was an excerpt from the Quackit.com website. And in this handout that I was able to compile for you from the website, it offered the fundamentals. What is a database? What is a database management system? What is a relational database management system? And so forth. It also gave you a mile-high view of the whole process of creating the database, creating the tables, the data fields, the relationships, querying a database, which is where you get most of the power. Once you have a lot of data in a database, you need to use that data to make decisions. So writing queries is one way to extract or pull out the data that you're interested in. Now, for this week, we're going to focus a bit on Microsoft Access. Microsoft Access is a relational database management system because Microsoft Access is built on tables. And in mathematics, a table is called a relation, and that's how it gets its name. Many people think that it gets the name because you create relationships between tables, and that's why it's called relational. But it really goes back farther. It goes back to the table structures because they're called relations in mathematics. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to closely follow the ebook, and you can get that by logging into Blackboard. Click on the ebook library, and then over here it's the second item. It's this dbms-textbook.pdf. So it's going to be really handy if you go ahead and download that and save that somewhere on your hard drive. And that's what I've done over here. So I have it opened already in Chrome, and as you can see, there's quite a bit to this ebook. It's very handy. It just provides the essentials of what you need to know and doesn't really delve much into any extra theory or other topics that are beyond the scope of this class. So the first section is all about database design. But in my opinion, it is easier for you to understand how to build a database if you've actually used the database. So if you've never used a database and you're trying to create something that you're unfamiliar with, it makes it twice as hard. So what we're going to do this week is we are going to check out the Access tutorial. And we're going to break this into a couple of weeks actually. So we're going to get started by simply learning how to create a database in Microsoft Access. So if you'll notice here that I have this open, and since I have this open in a web browser, these are links. So this PDF is actually has embedded links. So I can click the link Access Tutorial for Section 2, and it takes me to that section. Then I'm going to go ahead and zoom in because I know that personally I like to be able to see nice big pictures and such on the screen. The homework assignment for this week involves the Section 2 Access tutorial. I am on, as far as the PDF goes, I'm on page 35, but if you look at the bottom of the screen, I'm actually on page 29 of the actual document, simply because the beginning of the document has some index pages and such. So this tutorial is based on Access 2007. However, it will work just fine with the version we're using, which is Access 2016. Now, as with most of the Microsoft Office products, there's a ribbon at the top of the page or of the screen when you're using Access, and we'll see that in just a minute. And that makes it really easy to, especially for beginners, to get up to speed with Access, because on the ribbon your commands are in groups. Like this is a tables group, forms group, etc. And that's a lot easier to organize. Then also on the left edge we are going to see the navigation pane, and so let me go ahead and we're going to create a database, and you'll be able to see these sections of the screen. So in Microsoft Windows, you have a Start button down in the lower right. And if you're on Windows 10, it looks like this. You can click that button and then you can find your Microsoft Access. If you've used it frequently, it'll be under the most used. If not, then you'll be down here in the alphabetized list and it will be close to the top. So you can click that and open Access, or you might click an icon on your desktop, or if you have it set up like I do, I also have one down here. So I'm going to go ahead and click Access, and it opens up. The first choice you have to make is whether you're opening an existing database or you creating a new one. In our case, for this homework assignment, you're going to create a new one. So we're going to click on this blank desktop database, and we have to tell it where we're going to store the database, because with Microsoft Access and with other databases, you have to create a container first, then put your documents and data in the container. Whereas other applications like Microsoft Word, you simply open up a blank document and you start typing, and then the last step is to save it. So with Access, it's just the reverse. The first step is to save the container file somewhere. So I am going to change this location. You can see it wants to save it under the Documents folder under my account. So you click the little folder icon, navigate to a new location, and on my computer I organize everything by semester, and our semester code is 4166, and then by class. And I have a homework folder, so I'm going to go ahead and double click that, and then here I'm going to give this a name. Now for this class, it helps me if you will put your last name and then an underscore and then your first name and then the name of the database, okay, which in this case is well, it's homework 1, but you can put video. Okay, so that's what this one is. This is going to be a video database. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So now you see the name is here and the new path is here. We're going to hit the Create button. And Access opens up, and since you must have tables before you can do anything with a database, it automatically puts me in this Datasheet View where I'm creating a new table. To be honest, this is my least favorite view. Okay, so I don't normally use this view at all. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and just come over here to the right hand side of the screen. I'm circling with my mouse, and there is an X about an inch down. It's below the ribbon. So you want to click that X to close this table. You could also right click on the tab and you have an option to close the table. So we need to create a table, and we're going to do that using the information that we have in this tutorial. As you can see here on the All Access Objects, and has tables, queries, forms, and reports, you can see that navigation pane over here, but since we don't have anything in it, there's nothing to show just yet. You pull this little arrow down, and I have it so that it's sorting them by their type. So all the tables would be grouped together, all the forms grouped together, and so forth. And then we're not filtering any of them out, so we're actually telling it to show us all of the objects. But since we don't have any objects, there's nothing to see just yet. So we need to create something. If I scroll on down, our first section here is Introduction to Tables. And hopefully you have watched some of the other videos that I assigned that were on the gcflearnfree.org website. They discuss the various objects that you can put into a database, and in Microsoft Access, it's one of the few databases where you create one big file and it actually stores multiple objects in the one file. So we're going to create tables, queries, forms, reports, and they're all going to go in one Access database file. In other database systems, these things are separate files. So Access will spoil us just a little bit, but it's easier on beginners to learn with this. It's a simpler way to start. So we're actually going to create a table in Design View. Okay. So what's this about Design View? I'll go back over here, and I'm going to go to the Create tab because we're going to create something. Go to Create, and we have in this Tables group right here, the ribbon has this little dividing line, so this is a group. We have Table, Table Design, and SharePoint List. Okay, Table is the Datasheet View. If I click this, I'm back to that same panel that I had when the database opened up. Now I don't like that. I'll close it a different way this time. I'll right click here and hit Close. Let's use the second one. This is Design View. This is the way I like to create my tables because it's just, I think it's more self-explanatory. Right, so there it is. Okay, so now we have to enter a field name. And if we look, we have, let me scroll down just a little bit. Okay, we have the field names right here. Member ID, last name, first name, date of birth, street address, state, telephone, and date joined. Over here in the next column is the data type. Data type is very important because depending on the type of data that has to be stored, that determines how much space on the hard drive and how much space in memory it takes to work with this data. We try to be as conservative as possible, so you want to use a data type that uses the least amount of space, but yet it's still able to store your data. This first one is what we call an auto number field. Now this is a very special numeric data type. If you look down at the bottom, whichever one you have selected here, that is the one that it's displaying the properties for here at the bottom. And there's two tabs, a General tab and a Lookup tab, and these are the properties for the Member ID field. If I look down here, it tells me it's a long integer. So an auto number data type is a very special data type that it's a number, it's an integer, it doesn't have a decimal portion or a fraction portion to the number, but it automatically fills in with numbers. So you don't have to. So it's like, you know, a serial number. It's an ID number, so that, you know, each member that it gets added to the members table, they each have their own unique number, and it just increments it by one, because you can see here it says increment. Okay, so these are used quite a bit, and they're used for the purpose of giving every record a unique number. Just like students have a unique student ID number, we have unique Social Security numbers. So this is just a way to make sure everybody has a unique number. And you'll see the little key over here. This designates that it's a primary key. And there's a button on the ribbon that we can click to make that happen. So I'm going to go ahead and do this in Microsoft Access. I'm going to type this first one in, Member ID. I'm going to make it an auto number. And then I'm going to bring my mouse down here to the caption, and I'm going to type Member ID again. Now you might notice there's a little bit of a difference. This one doesn't have a space, and this one does. And that's simply because when you're creating field names, this is the programmer's view of the database. Typically end users won't see this. But when you want to have this column or this field listed on a report or a form, then you want to see its more attractive name, okay, which is with a space. It's easier to read for the end users. So we're going to be doing that in here. I'm trying to use some best practices. So let's go ahead and do this. So we're going to have Member ID, it's an auto number, and then we're going to put a caption down here. And this is how we do it. So click in here, I'm going to type Member. I'm going to tab over or press enter or click your mouse to get into this column, and then we're going to change it to an auto number. And then I'm going to come down here and type in the caption. And one last thing, while I'm still clicked in this field, up here in my ribbon, I'm going to click primary key. Now a table can have only one primary key, but the primary key might include 2 or 3 of these fields. Now let's go ahead and put in the rest of the fields, And if you want to, you can pause the video and then type these in. This is on page 30. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go ahead and quickly type them in, and I will probably edit out some of the time that it takes me to do this. As I get these started, we do not see down, of course we can't see in this picture, but I'm going to go ahead and make each of these 35 characters long for text, and I'll show you how I do that, because it's better to go ahead and type something in here and make it a shorter number, because right now it's 255. Now the computer may not care that much that we're wasting space, but an end user typing data in could almost type a sentence in for someone's last name. Or they could type supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. You know, that's garbage. You don't want that to be a field to take that much data when it's somebody's last name. So that's another reason to pay attention down here. Some other items that are down here, formatting, we'll talk about that in a minute. That's just to make it look nicer when you view it on a form or report. An input mask makes data entry a little bit easier. Here's our caption again, and I'm going to type in last space name. The required field. This is very important. If you do not want the end user to leave something blank, then you want to set this to required. And I think when you're putting in a member's name, it's pretty important that you know, setting up a new member, that you don't leave this blank. So I want to say yes, that it's required. Okay, so remember that the text fields are going to be 35. So I'll go ahead and do the rest of these. Okay, now on the telephone, something you can do with this especially is you can add an input mask. It makes it easier to type the telephone, because what if you don't know if you're supposed to enter the parentheses and the dashes or not? So what I've done is I've clicked my mouse in the input mask, and then I'm going to come all the way over to the right hand side, and there's a button with 3 little dots. I'm going to click that button, and it says, well, you got to save the table before we're going to let you do this. So we're going to save this table, and this is going to be the members table. Okay, so I just type members. Alright, so now it's going to go ahead and let me proceed with the input mask. And notice one of the first ones is phone number, and that's the one that I really want. So I'm going to leave it on that and click next, and I'm just going to click next, and then I'm going to hit finish. And it's going to save the number in the database without the dashes, which is fine. It saves more space that way. Okay, so and it built this for us, so we did not have to type that in. You're going to see that in a moment when we look back at our handout and our ebook. Okay, so we have telephone, the date that they joined. Now I'm making these date time, because if it's a date, and we can use a date picker then. In your book on page 30, they're showing these as text, which you could type them in as text, but date and time makes it a little bit more intelligent. So let me go ahead here on this one, and I want the date time field to just appear as a month, day, year. I don't want to see the hours and minutes. So I'm going to click in the format. I'm going to use the drop down arrow, and I'm going to say make it a short date. So that's how it's going to display it. I'm going to do the same thing for the down at this one. Also format and make it short date. And it looks like I forgot to put the caption on this one. Okay. Now something you might want to do also is we would create validation rules for these. And you would want to have something in here that would validate. Maybe they can't join unless it's after a certain date. You know, if your company didn't exist before the year 2000, then you wouldn't want members to have a date joined earlier than that. So that's something we'll take a look at a little bit later. That's what these validation rules are. And if it violates the validation rule, then the message is the validation text. Okay, so that is my first table, and I'm going to close it. And you can see it listed over here. All right. So we've created this, and the field properties here at the bottom are further explained here in the next section. And you should read all of this. I mean, this is very important information. I mentioned the data type, and here is a definition of each individual option that you have. You saw where we used auto number, we've used text, and I also used the date and time. Okay, so these there's a new one that's a long text that has replaced memo, but they can store large number of characters. And there is another this Olay object is another one that you could actually store like an Excel spreadsheet or a Word document. Okay, so that's a great way to organize your company's documents. Here's a hyperlink. You can store a link to a web page as well as a link to a file on your drive. Okay, and we'll be talking about the Lookup Wizard. This really isn't a data type, but it's a great way to link one field to a field in another table. That's what a wizard does. A wizard is a step-by-step helper that you use that leads you through all the steps that you need to create something. And that's where they're showing here that something like a state abbreviation and a state name. So we're going to go ahead and create a state table. Okay, that's a great way to use a Lookup Wizard. So let's go ahead and do that now. We're going to go back over to Access. We're going to go to Create, and we're going to go to Table Design. Okay, it says State Abbreviation. And then we got State Name. Now I'm going to actually call that State ID because I think the word abbreviation is really long there. So let's put State ID. Alright, and we know it's going to be 2 characters because that's what our abbreviations are. I'm going to go ahead and give it a caption with the space. I'm going to click back up here and make this a primary key. And then I want to put in State Name. And let me think here, probably 25 characters is enough. If not, we can come back and make it longer. And let's make this required because we wouldn't want to see an ID without a name. Okay. Alright, so we've got that. We're going to hit Save, and it's going to be called State. Alright, and now I'm going to switch this over to the view. I'm going to switch the view over to Datasheet. When you go to Datasheet View for a table that you've already created, you can now enter data into it. So if I want a Kentucky in here, I can do that. I can put in Ohio. I could put Indiana. Okay, so I'm just doing data entry, right? And I'm typing these in. All right, so I want you to have some data you can see because when I use this in a minute, it's easier if it has some data. It's friendlier. Okay, so you can see now that we've created this. And it says now to use a Lookup Wizard, we're going to select the Lookup Wizard from the data type drop-down box. So we're going to go back and we're going to change something in the member table. Remember, the member table had a state field. So I'm going to right mouse click on members and I'm going to go to Design View. And now here's where state was at. And we said it was going to be 2 characters. But this doesn't have any data in it yet. We haven't typed any member data in, so we have 0 records. It's better to create your lookups before your table has any data in it, because that way you can make sure that the data from the lookup table was used properly when you created your records. So we're going to do this. We're going to create a lookup. So we're changing it from short text. We're going to come down here to the Lookup Wizard. I want to click this. I have 2 options. I can pull values from an existing table, or if my list is really short, there's no sense creating a table for it. If it's just a couple of items, then I can type the values that I want, and they live with the table. Okay, it doesn't ever really go to another table and look it up. So something like gender, which would be male, female, or undisclosed. There's 3 items, right? There's 3 choices there. You don't need to create a new table to look things up like that. But when you have 50 states, yes, you want to have a separate table. So I want to look the lookup field to get the values from another table. So I'm going to leave that selected, click Next, and now I need to tell it what table. So it's the state table. Click Next. Finally, what do I want to see in the drop-down list when it displays these? I think I'd like to see both of those. So I use the little double arrow and brings them both over. I'm going to click Next. How do you want them sorted? Well, probably by state name. I'm going to click Next. And then this is what it's going to look like. Only it's going to pull in the state abbreviation. If I unhide this, then you'll see both columns, which might not be a bad idea in this case. Most of the time you're going to hide that. But here it's okay to see them. Okay, so we're going to click Next. And it says, okay, well, which one of those fields will it pull and put into the member table when I use the little drop-down list? And I want the state ID. Okay, that's good. One last thing. It's very good if you go ahead and use what we call data integrity rules. We want to enable data integrity. Now what this will mean is I cannot put a phony or fake or made up state ID in my members table unless it already exists in the state table. So all the legitimate values are in the state table, and that will prevent me from entering some bad data into this. Okay, so that's what this data integrity rule does. It says it has to be in the state table before I allow you to pick it and put it in this table. Alright, so we hit Finish. It says you have to save the table again. I'll say yes. Now if I switch over to Datasheet View and I look at this, I can type something in each one of these, but when I get to state, I now have a drop-down list. And these are the only things I can pick. I can't type anything in. If I type in, let me put New York. Alright, when I get to the end of this, then it would fuss about this and it would not let me keep it. Notice that it's starting out at 1 here, member ID 1. And if I get all the way over here to the end, oh, this is cool. See how my little input mask that I chose earlier fills that out so I know what I'm supposed to type. I don't have to type the parentheses, just the numbers. The date has a date picker because we made it date and time. Now if I press enter, it's going to fuss about more things than just this because I've left the names blank. Oh, I'll go ahead and do it. Let's watch this. There it is. It says you must enter a value in the members.lastname field. I'll click OK. Let me do that. I'm going to leave it blank again. I'm a bad end user. Okay. Now here's another one. It says nope, the first name's not good. Okay, so I'm going to put something in there. Alright. And now what's it fussing about? It says you cannot add or change a record because a related record is required in the state table. It doesn't like the fact that New York does not exist in the state table. That's the data integrity rule. So if I change this to Kentucky, and now it likes it. I did not make date of birth, street address, telephone, or date joined, or state. I did not make those required. That's why I'm able to leave some of these blank. Okay, so I'm going to close that one. Alright, what else do we have? So we've checked out the Lookup Wizard. We have additional information about field properties. Now, this is just telling you the ranges of values. When you choose a certain data type like the byte, integer, long integer, these are all numeric data types. So if you choose the number data type, then these are subtypes that you choose from. And it just depends on what you're going to do with the data. If the byte is a very compact way to store data, and it says it can store positive integers from 1 to 255. This will be a good one to use for number of children. I don't know anybody that has 200 children. Okay, so this should work from 1 to 255. You can store 0 in it too. Integer, as you can see the range it goes actually from positive to and negative value. So negative 32,768 to positive 32,768. And then when you get into the long integers, you get into the billions. Single and double and decimal are all floating point. They have a fractional or a decimal component in the number. The ones from here up, these are all integers, so no decimal point. Now, I mentioned formatting, especially when I went in and changed the date, the date of birth, and the date joined in the members table. I made both of those a short date. Okay, there's all different things you can do with formatting. As you can see here, if you really want to have a dash in the 4th position, so you got 3 digits, then you got the 4th position, and then you got 4 digits. If you really want a dash there, then you could put something like this in. And the @ symbol is a placeholder. And the @ symbol, as it says here, indicates that a character or a space is required. Okay, so some of them have an optional. The ampersand is your optional space. So it wouldn't have to have 4 digits. So you can see here, this one has to have 4 digits, or it would put a space in there. This one, the ampersand at the end, fills that in. So we can play around with this. I mean, it's not important that you memorize this. We can always look this up, or you can Google all these formats. But just know that you have this ability to make things look nicely formatted. And the same goes when you're working with numbers and currency. Sometimes you want to see a $sign with commas for the thousand separator, and you want a decimal point. And if it's 00 at the end, you want it to show 00 instead of cutting it off. There are just so many things you can do. And there's more. Here, if you want negative numbers to display in red, you can do that. So that the number here in parentheses would be the negative value. So there's so many things you can do. With dates and times, you can make it a short date. You can also create your own custom formats here, where you can actually have the name of the day of the week, the full name of the month, the full 4 digits for the year. As you can see here, you know, these are all using 4. 4 typically with the dates means the full name. Then this would just be the first 3 characters, Monday, and the first 3 characters, Jan, okay, for the month. But we can go look all this up, so don't worry. And once again, if you want something to format a certain color, now it's nice to also provide a default value. So if your end user doesn't type something in, then you can have a default value. And I could have done that with the members table. I'll open it in Design View. How about I put state, and I make state have a default value of Kentucky. Alright, so that would mean that any new records, if this whatever this video store is, if they're in Lexington, Kentucky, more than likely most of their customers are going to be from Kentucky. So this would be one less field you'd have to fill in. So I'll go ahead and show you. So notice how it already says Kentucky over here. If I go back and change this, let's say the store's moved now, it's going to go to Ohio. Okay, I'm going to hit save. I'll go to back to Datasheet View. Now you see it defaults to some value. Okay, it's very handy. It saves on data entry. Primary key. The primary key is the field that has a unique value for every record or row in the table. Student ID is an example of a primary key. Social Security number, example of a primary key. Serial number, and so on. And as you saw me use this earlier, when I was on a certain field, I clicked the primary key button and it put this little key right here. this is one of the things that you will be deciding when you do your database project. You'll have to say, well, what should my primary key be? Should I choose an existing field value like their student ID number, or should I generate a counter value like an auto number and make that the primary key? We will talk about indexes later on, but an index is a quick way to look up data on a certain field. If, like in our example, we have this state that is actually connected to, I'll open this one up, this state value here, then I really should create an index on this. If I'm going to search on state a lot, I could create an index, and I could come down here and say that this is indexed. It will make the database run faster when you have a large volume of records in the tables. For us right now we don't, so it would just add more overhead. But we will talk about what indexes are a little later on, so don't worry. I briefly mentioned the validation rules that we can add that keeps the data in good shape. It warns the user that, you know, this is not valid data, and then the user has an opportunity to fix it. We took a look at an input mask. That was the phone number mask that I used. And then once again, you can build your own custom input mask with all these different character options. Okay, so we are currently working on this practice one. We've already created the database, so we will not be downloading this. You're going to create this from scratch, which you've already, if you're following along with me, you've already created 2 tables so far. Now, what I want you to do, I need for you to create these other tables, and I'm going to make my screen just a little bit smaller. There we go. You're going to create the video distributor table, and if you'll notice here, this is the field name where it says attribute. That is the field name. Then if it's a primary key, you better put the little key on it. The data type, this one's an auto number. You don't have to supply the number of characters for the auto number, but you do on other fields, so this one will be 35. Whether it's required or not, if it has a validation rule, format, default value, its caption. Don't worry about the foreign key right now. Okay, let me do the first one, and then I'm going to let you, like I say, I'm going to go ahead and work ahead, and I'll probably pause the video and show you what I have when I'm done. Okay, so I'm going to create the video distributor table, and this is the same process you're going to follow when you create the others. So here we go. So video distributor. So I'm going to create table design, and I'm going to go ahead and use my paper copy since I won't have to keep flipping back and forth on you guys. So this is on, find the right page. This is on page 36. So if you print this out, might be a little bit easier. Okay, distributor. Is that OR? Yep. OR _. ID. Now I don't like using spaces. I probably would have just taken that space out as I'm putting this in, but I'm just going to make it match the book. It's an auto number. Okay, and the caption. Alright, and I'm going to go ahead and make it the primary key. And then we've got distributor name. That's text, and it's 35. So you come down here where the 255 is on my machine, and 35. Now that might be different on your computer because this can be changed in Microsoft Access settings. It is a required field, so I have to come down here and say required is yes. And as I look over, then I'm going to put the caption in here. Okay, so it's just distributor. Okay, that is all we're going to do for this one. We're going to hit save. And we're going to name it Video Distributor. Click OK. And we're going to close this one. We're going to create another one. We're going to create video category. Category ID. Once again, it's an auto number. And category name. I need to go back and put that caption in there. Okay, that's short text, and it is 35, and it is required. In case you're wondering, the primary key is required by default, so you do not have to set the required field on that. It will automatically be required. Okay, let me go back up and fix this one's caption. I did not do it. And now I've got a typo. There we go, I'll fix it. Okay, so I'm going to make this primary key and save. And this is video category. Close this one. Okay, so we've taken care of these two. We just created these two tables. And guess what? We have the video title table, and we're going to have actually a few more tables. So let's go ahead and do this one. The video title, create table design, and title ID. It's on auto number. Its caption is title ID. And let's move on to the next field. It is video title. It's text. It's 50. I'm just going to move on down. It's caption. The video title. It is required. Alright, I'll move down to the next one. It's release date. This is going to be date time. And it is required. And it's going to have a validation rule. We're going to type it just as you see it, greater than or equal to. The pound signs or the hash marks, hashtags, are what you use in Microsoft Access to surround a date. Okay, so this has to be greater than or equal to January 1st, 1900. And then we're going to format this so that it appears as a short date. And then its caption is release date. Alright, let's keep going. Video duration. This would be in minutes. So this is a numeric value, and we're just going to tell it it's a number, and we're going to leave it at long integer. We will make the caption duration. This one is not a required field. Alright, now let's go to the next one, distributor name. Now, if you recall, we have a distributor table that we created earlier, right here, video distributor. So we're going to use the lookup here. So we're going to tell it that we want to use a lookup wizard. We're going to look these names up in another table, the video distributor table. I'm going to select the video distributor. I'm going to pull both fields over. And I am going to have an ascending order by their name. And I'm going to leave this hidden. So I'm going to click Next, and I will check Enable Data Integrity. Once again, that makes absolutely sure that we cannot pick and insert data for a distributor who doesn't exist already in the video distributor table. Hit Finish. It makes you save the table, and this will be video title. Click OK. It's fussing because I don't have a primary key. I'm going to say No, I don't want it to create a primary key. Let me go up here and go ahead and set that. Alright, I'm going to hit save again. Alright, and let's do one more. Category name and another lookup. Going to look this up in the category table. I'm going to pull these over, click next, and sort it by category. I'm just doing almost exactly the same thing I did with distributor, and put a check mark on enable data integrity and finish. And it always makes you save when you create a lookup. Now, oh yeah, they both are required. Okay, so let's go back to this one and look down here, change the required to yes, and do the same thing for the category name. Change required to yes. Alright, let's resave the table. And we're going to say yes. Now, if you'll notice on page 37, I'll scroll down a little bit, we have some data. I'm going to have you enter this data into your tables. And the only thing I want you to notice down here on the video titles, apparently they had a couple of rows of data that they've deleted. That's why we're on number 3. That's one of the issues with using the auto number field. It's like going to the deli counter and pulling off the little paper ticket and then walking away. So they never ever really waited on you. You just pulled off a tab and then walked away. Well, that's what happens with these auto numbers. It doesn't reuse them. So if you use one and you go back then later and delete that record, that number's just gone. It's not in your system. There's still all the numbers that are there are still unique, but it's okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to enter this data, and should be able to enter all of these just fine. So I'm going to get busy entering some data. I'm going to go ahead and close this one, and let's put data first in the video category. Okay, and there's a reason for this. The reason I would want to start with that table. Let me scroll down just a little bit and show you something. This is the actual database design of the table right here. This is what the class is really all about. This is an entity relationship diagram. Entity relationship diagram. And you will design a project. You have to decide how the entities, which are persons, places, things, or events, how they're related to one another. So here is the middle table, and you see there's more lines coming into it than anything, it seems. The video titles, your video titles. Now if you were a video store, it's very possible you could have multiple copies of the same video. We like the Terminator movies. Okay, I'm sure there are several Terminator movies, Terminator 1 and so forth, that the store would have copies of. Now only one company owns that video and distributes it. So you buy it from that company, maybe it's Sony or whoever, and that title, that video, is owned by that company, but then you have multiple copies of it. So you may have put some kind of little inventory tag on it that says, you know, what the video's title is, and then its ID number, and then some little dash, and then what copy this is. When you rent them out, there has to be a record of who rented it and when they rented it. So here's the members. This is the member table we've already created. Members rent videos. Okay, so you can almost make a sentence out of this. And this is how you go about designing your database. You're going to identify all of the entities, the persons, places, things, or events. Then you're going to list all of the data that you need to capture about that person, place, thing, or event. And then you're going to connect these lines. Now, when we created our lookup tables, you didn't know this, but it created the lines going between the category and the title and the distributor and the title. And if you don't believe me, I will show you. I'm going to Database Tools and then Relationships. And here, actually we have two because we did a lookup for the members. And you'll see here I've got a little scroll bar. If you stretch this table down a little bit, that goes away. And here are the other two because we created a lookup on the distributor name and we said look it up in the distributor table. So you see this little 1 and this infinity symbol. That means one to many. So one distributor, such as Sony Video, might have multiple video titles in this table, in this video title table. So we might own multiple DVDs that came from the Sony Video company. Okay? And that's why you see one on this side and many on this side. So many of those DVDs will be from that one distributor. And the same as the category. If it's a horror or a thriller or a drama, there are several movies in here that are dramas. But we'll only list the drama category in this table once. So that's one to many. Alright, so let's get busy entering some data. We're going to enter the data on the one sides first. Okay, so anything out here on the that has a 1, those tables should be set up first. So we would want to set up state, category, and distributor first. Alright, so let's go ahead. We've got some things in state already. Let's do category. So double click it, and this is an auto number, so we don't have to type anything in there. It just says new, and we just press enter and we move over. So our first category is action. Press enter, enter, and the next one's horror, and the next one is a thriller, the next one is sci-fi, and the last one is drama. Okay, that's it for that table. Now if you ever wanted to add more, you just come right back here and add another one. Alright, let's do distributor. Double click it, and we're going to type in Crazy Video. That's some distributor name. SBC Video. DVD Now. East Park Media. And Scary Entertainment. Oh, okay. There we go. Now you can come up here like you do in Excel and double click and make these wider. Alright, so we've got all those now. And since I made that wider, it says do you want to change the layout? I'll say yes. Now, video title. These are a little bit longer. And you'll notice here, let me go ahead and I'll just go ahead, I don't care what I'm going to type in here. It's going to make me enter a release date. So I'm just making something up here. It doesn't matter. I want you to see how it's going to be a 1? If you really want ours to match theirs, then enter a couple that are just silly records that aren't really legitimate. And then we'll delete them. And then if we do any more queries and things, then everything will match with their records. They're 3, 4, 5, 6. You don't necessarily have to do this. I'm just doing it to be consistent with theirs. So I know students like their screens to look like the book. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do number 3 now. Freedom Day, and it's January 12th. 01/12/2006. It is 140 minutes. It is Crazy Video. Oh, I didn't. Be patient, Microsoft Access. It's a action. Okay, now I can come up here and get rid of these first two. I can click on this little record selector button, and up here in my ribbon I have the delete. It wants to confirm it, and I'll say yes. And I will delete this one. Yes, so now, you see mine looks just like your book now. T-Trek 12/3/2000. It's 190 minutes. It's also crazy video, but it is a sci-fi. I hope you're starting to see how wonderful these lookup fields are. Well, this is an old movie. This is almost as old as I am. 300. And this is DVD now. And it is a drama. And, oh, this is a neat name. It's not my Terminator movie, it's Exterminator. 06 13 1999. It is 200 minutes. SBC video. Action. And the last one I'm going to put in here . 10/16/2006. 119 and East Park, and it is Action. Okay, so I have data in my tables, and now I can go back and do a little bit more work based on some information in your book. As I mentioned just a few moments ago about these table relationships, when you create a lookup table and you enable the data integrity, it creates a relationship between two tables. In most cases, the lookup is a one-to-many. One distributor, like Sony Video, will have many videos in our inventory. Now, this is an introduction to table relationships. The primary key in one table becomes a foreign key in the other table. Now what that means, let's just use the example we've been using, where we have a distributor like Sony. So it's the Sony ID here would be a primary key. See the little key? But over here, this field that it matches up to is called a foreign key. So a foreign key is a key that points to the primary key in another table. So that's why it says it's foreign. Alright? So they have to have the same data type. Now this is where students get a little confused. When we created this, we made this an auto number. But when we created this, it made it a long integer. Long integers will match to auto numbers. Now if this had been a text field, then this would have to be a text field. Their data types have to match. And here they're talking about how you would create one if it didn't already exist. They're very easy. It's just drag and drop process. If you need to, you can always go back in and recreate one. Let me see about doing that. Let's see, what do we have? We've got the video titles and video copies table, which we haven't created video copy yet. Well, let me just do one of these. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to delete this link. I clicked it. I'm going to hit delete. It says yes, you deleted it. Now if I want to recreate this, I start on the side that has the primary key, and I click and hold my mouse on the primary key field, and I come over here and I start by finding the corresponding foreign key, and I put the tip of the mouse, the pointy end of the mouse, in that word, in the name of that field, and I'll let go. And then I verify it here, and I'm going to hit Referential Integrity, which is the same thing we used earlier, and I'll hit Create. And you'll see here that it's created the relationship again. Okay, so there it is. So I got it back. And we will do all of that when we work on your projects. Okay, so looks like we need one more table. If we go back over here and look at the entity relationship diagram, oh, we need two more tables. We don't have this table. we don't have the video copy table, and we don't have the rental table. Now, there's a certain order we need to do these in. And the fact that this is a one to many to this table means that this one is going to look up its value in this one side of the relationship. So I need to create this one first. So we're just going to have to come up with what data types we think these are. This would be an auto number, the video copy ID. The video title is going to be a lookup to this one, and currently rented will be just yes, no. So let's go ahead and we're going to create this one. So I'll go back over to Access, and I'll go to, I want to close this. Anytime you move something around, you have to save the relationships view again. Alright, table design, and we're going to start with, the field is going to be called Video Copy ID. We're going to make this an auto number. We're going to make it a key field. We're going to come down here and give it a caption, Video Copy ID. Alright, come down to the next field. This one is going to look up the title ID in the video table. So we're going to call it Video Title. It's going to be a lookup. And we're going to look this up in another table. Click Next. And this is going to be in the video title table. And whatever fields we think we need in order to identify which one we want. I think we'll need at least this one, and maybe the release date. I don't think the others are needed to identify a certain video. Okay, we'll click Next. And let's sort them by the title and maybe the release date. You know, sometimes they remake a movie and you need to know which one it is. So this is what the user would see. And they would be able to see the name and then the date. So this is good. Click Next. Enable your integrity and hit Finish. Let's save it again. Let's save this table as Video Copy. And we have one more field to add. And that is the currently rented. Well, these are hard to read. Currently rented. This is going to be yes, no. So I'll make it a yes, no. And we're going to hit save. And hit yes and close. Okay, so now we have this table done. We're going to create our final table, and that's the rental table. And the rental table will look up the video copy from the video copy table. It will look up the member name from the member table. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's do a create, table design, and let's get all the fields for this one. It is rental ID. It's going to be an auto number. While I'm here, I'll just go ahead and put the primary key on it. Come down, and caption will be rental ID. This is like a transaction ID every time you rent one. Now let's look up the member. So it's going to be member name. And this is going to link Lookup Wizard. Look it up in the members table. And how much information do we need to find somebody? Probably just last name, first name, birth date. Should be enough. And sort them ascending by last name, first name. Well, I guess you could put birth date in there just in case you have more than one person with the same last name, first name. Okay, we want to leave this as it is, hide the key, click Next, enable the integrity, and hit Finish. And we have to hit Save on the table, and this one's called Rental. Alright, our next field is Video Copy. And that's going to be another lookup to the copy table. Video copy, Lookup Wizard. Go to the video copy table. Oh, let's see, let's just bring them all over. Let's sort it by the title. And click Next and enable your integrity and hit Finish. Save the table again, yes. And we want rental date. This is just going to be a date time. I just want to make it a short date. If you don't make it a short date, you will see hours and minutes on that. And it might just be midnight, or the person has to type them in, and that's no fun. Due date. Also date time. And format it. Something else I need to do is put my captions. I hope oh nope, I'm skipping them. That's terrible. This is really the member ID. Okay, good on this. All right, now rental cost. And this can be currency. Okay, hit save. And I'm going to hit close. Alright, so now if I go to my database tools, go to relationships. Now I may not be seeing all of them. Here's the trick. Go up and click this button that says all relationships, and they all come in there. And if you want, you can rearrange these. We're going to have an extra field here that they table that they don't have because we added state. But let's go ahead. Let's see, video titles down here, categories here. I'm just making my screen match theirs in the book. Let's put this guy up here. Okay, so if you take a mental picture of this and then go back over and look at this, should be the same thing. The rest of this, if we've talked about the relationships and how to enforce referential integrity. Now we'll talk more about the cascade on update and cascade delete. That means if you were to delete the parent record, then all the children get deleted. So that would mean, in our case, if, scroll down here to the ERD. For instance, let's say you have 1,000 videos that you bought from Sony Video. If you deleted Sony Video, maybe they are no longer in business, you delete that Sony Video records, and it would delete all 1,000 of your DVD records. You don't want that. So you want to be careful with this cascade delete. Now, cascade update is okay. Let's say that Sony Video is in here, but we want to change their ID number for some reason. Maybe we're going to a different numbering scheme. We change their ID number here, it automatically goes and changes the ID number on all of the Sony Video records over here. That would be okay. But the cascade delete is very dangerous, so I very seldom use it. Okay. One other thing is you can see those relationships, the one-to-manys, in your actual tables. If we go and open up one, let's say, let me do where's the rental? Open that one up. Oh, I don't have any records yet. It's going to be tough when I don't have any records. Let's do the video title. Okay, so we've got some records here. And if I hit this plus sign right here, it will go out and try to show me if there are any related records, okay, which we don't have any right now. But if we go to more, you can expand all the sub-data sheets. That's what those are called. Expand them all, and you can see everything expanded. This makes more sense once we have more data. So right now it's not that useful. Okay, so at that point, if you have followed along with me, you would have this homework assignment done. All you would need to do now is go to Database Tools, Compact and Repair. This cleans up your database. close the database, then go back to the folder where you created the database. Okay, I created it under the homework folder, so here it is. It's a very good idea that you zip this up. The way you zip it, you right click on it and you tell it to send it to a compressed zipped folder. So I'm going to click this. And it gives it the same name, only puts .zip at the end. I'm going to press enter. So now I have a new folder. It's got a zipper on it. I would now go back to Blackboard, go to Assignments, and we are in week 3. And I would click this link, and then I would tell it to upload my new zip file. And you will now have homework 1 complete. Thank you and have a good day.